Hi, and welcome to another episode of Nursing Your Way to Wealth, where a mental health nurse and an accountant talk about wealth creation, personal development, and financial independence in the UK to help you live the life you deserve. So, today we're going to talk about money lessons if you are 20 or around 20. So, if you're young and you're starting out your career, so you've just finished university, you've got your first job, and you've received your first pay packet. So, to help me with this, I've got Alex, the accountant. He's here too. We're going to talk about the five things that, if you do these or most of these right and well, and you set up good practices, you'll be immeasurably better off financially. And we hope that it brings a sense of calm, a reduction in anxiety to really your whole life. So, and these are quite simple lessons that we've both learned ourselves, probably later than 20. And we just want to collate all of these into a simple episode that's repeatably listenable. And to set the new generation, Generation X, I think, on a good path.
Yeah, hey Alex. Interesting and exciting episode, I think, and I have to wind the clock back quite a few years to remember this time. But certainly, it's super exciting. You'd have, finished university or finished your college or whatever, starting to earn some proper money and going from a situation where you're probably, living in an overdraft, you've got student credit cards, or you've got the student loans and kind of penny pinching and being very aware to now suddenly getting a salary. And it's very tempting. I think what will probably become clear throughout the episode is it's all about a balance. Like we're not here to, suck the life out of you, and you definitely don't need that. But it's a balance of, enjoying and rewarding yourself for your achievement. If you're starting on the career ladder, but also having kind of a mind, the kind of your half an eye on the future and making sure that you can put in some really clear systems and help yourself later on. So I think we had a good chat just before the episode on some of the things which we'll cover today. So like I guess, big five things which spring to mind is getting a pension match from your employer, clearing off any debts, planning and starting to budget and being very aware of your spending, um, and then starting to invest your money as well. I don't know if you wanted to we do one at a time, Alex, and we can talk through them. Maybe on the what do you think would be the most important if there is? I don't think there's necessarily a priority of these, but yeah, be keen to hear what you think.
Sure, I think it depends on the really individual circumstance. So these are just a list of good practices with your money that we believe will set you up for a good life free of financial worry. So I think for me, planning probably should come first, and then perhaps an emergency fund, clearing any debts, pension match, and then investments. But really, we'll do it in little segments between one to five, and we'll hopefully just be able to articulate why we think these things, but also how it will benefit you in later life. So I certainly wish, I mean, I'm 35 now, I certainly wish 20-year-old me spent far less money on cars and invested more money, because I would be probably twice as wealthy as I am now if I'd done those things. But no, buying small French hatchbacks was certainly a better thing for me. So I wasn't as clued up as I hope I was. So, Alex, in terms of planning, how what are the key things we need to look for here?
Yeah, I think so. Planning is super important, and what I would go down to is, ultimately it's learning how to budget. When you start your new role or you start your job, you're going to be on probably the biggest pay rise that you'll have ever had, and it's about getting used to being able to manage that money. And I think to your point, Alex, earlier about, if it is individual in that some people, might come out of university without any debt, some people might have some credit cards that they need to clear. But it's about learning to what's my income going to be, being sensible with if you're, renting or your food bills, making sure that there's enough headroom in there to allow you to actually then start on kind of a wealth building journey. So, and I think whilst also leaving some room to have a bit of fun and, quite likely if you've come through university and you start your jobs, you'll have a circle of friends and you'll want to be socializing and meeting up with people. But it's really important that you can start contributing to building up emergency funds, clearing off any debts, making sure that you potentially starting to invest, and that all that has a place in your planning right from the beginning. And I think one of the big reasons I'm a big advocate of this is it's you're in the time of your life where you're almost starting from fresh. So you're not used to any salary yet. You've not, kind of collected liabilities to kind of that are going to be draining your money from you. But you're at the point where you can actually start instilling some discipline in yourself and building systems that work for you to really help you in your future. So the way I start to look at it is if you can build this infrastructure when you start your career, you won't be putting loads and loads of money into this. But as you progress through your career and, 20 years down the line, you'll have more money to go through this system, but the system and the foundation will still be the same. And so that for me is really fundamental, is if you can set that up early, then you can be absolutely like miles ahead further down the line. And that's one of the bigger regrets I have when I look back at. So I started on a graduate program, moving down to London for the first time. You get what I thought was a decent wage, and you do get a little bit carried away with yourself of that. Oh wow, I've got some money now and I can go out and do things. But 2 or 3 years down the line, I've realised actually I was probably a bit late, and then I should have been investing a bit more and being more aggressive and putting these automatic systems in place. So I speak from, experience from being super excited and having some money in my pocket to now being like, I wish I'd have been able to just being that little bit more disciplined a bit earlier on.
It's interesting because I feel the exact same about it. I at one point when I think I was 20, 21, 22, something like that. I had two cars, a couple of £1,000 worth of cars, living in back at my mum's house. I worked a full time job, kind of 9 to 5 in a warehouse, and I had more money sitting on the driveway than I did in my bank account, or any other monetary kind of forms like that. And I think that was just what I prioritized at that point. But if someone had kind of instilled these lessons in me of actually, if you do this and this with your money, i.e., invest it wisely, because you have so much more time for it to leave it and invest, it's the best kind of path to creating more wealth. And I just didn't know it at the time, so I can't do something that I don't know. So I don't really regret it, but it's certainly something that I wish someone a bit wiser than me had just come along and said, with parts of your salary, if you do this with it and you invest it wisely in like a low cost index fund, for example, and you leave it 40 years or whatever, it will then grow this much. I would have been astounded at that time, and I probably would have done it. And I feel like this is where planning where your money's going to go is it can be a difficult thing, and obviously your salary should rise over the course of your career. And this is where I like percentages. So if, for example, you get your first job, you put say 20% of the money you have into an emergency fund, you invest 10% of that money, you spend the rest of it however you see fit on whatever else you need to spend it on. It's especially important if you are, say, living at home with your parents. Either they charge you rent or they don't. If you don't, you're even more fortunate. You've got more spare cash, so you could think about upping those figures, perhaps investing 25%, 30% of your income. Because if you invest it when you're 20 and you need it when you're say 50, you've got 30 years of compounding growth. And Alex and I are big fans of compound interest calculators. You can freely find loads of them online. Do play around with it. Put 20% of your salary into an investment each month. Use 5%, say, to be conservative, and then see what figures come out. And I'll promise you'll probably be way off. They'll be way higher than you think. So, and I think instilling those like good money habits early. So if 10% of your money you invest it every month, regardless, and that's a spent portion of money already because you're investing it in You should be the person you pay first. You work hard enough for your money. So if that just becomes a certain thing, and you earn, I don't know, double, triple your salary over the time of your career, that 10% amount goes up each time. If you can, do more. But if that's all you can do, great. You're far better off than certainly than not doing it. So, Alex, thoughts on using percentages that way, or is there a better option?
Yeah, I think something nice and simple like that works. And I think, yeah, if you're fortunate, I think your living situation is going to have a big impact on how much money you can save. But if you are fortunate enough to have, your parents or your kind of rental, potentially got a mortgage or a house, we don't know, but assuming not, then it is, I think, important to be aggressive with your saving. But yeah, using percentages like that is a good way of it's to start. And look, it's not something that's fixed forever. You can play around with the percentages, and as you kind of follow your wealth building path, you'll have built up an emergency fund. So then once that's built up, you can then reallocate that money to whether that be paying down some debts or paying, investing some additional money. So I like that idea of percentages, and I also like, and I think what's really important is that comes first, and then you spend up what's remaining. So almost pay yourself first is such a wise way to go about this. And this it might take a few months to get used to kind of getting, to doing your planning and your budgeting, but you'll soon be really aware of, you'll get to know your numbers really, really easily, and you'll be off to the races, and it won't be a chore. It becomes becomes quite addictive after a while. But yeah, I think that percentages are a great way of thinking of it. And then also it's not dependent on, no matter how much money then you put through that system, the percentage is the same and the value increases. So it's, yeah, I'm a big advocate of that.
I thought you might be being an accountant. You love a percentage.
Yeah, I do.
A percentage sign, yeah. Okay, so I mean, covered kind of planning, a little bit on investing. I mean, guys, ladies, girls, whatever. We've done episodes individually on each of these topics. So if you want more of a deep dive, that's where to go. Look back through the archive, and you'll find episodes on pensions, three on investing, another one on paying down debts, and some more on financial planning. So we just want you to take positive steps, like happen to life. Don't let life happen to you. And before you know it, you're 35 like me and thinking, oh, I wish 20-year-old me would have been smarter than you are. So I think it's, yeah, just good practices make a huge difference. And in terms of investing, if you start doing investing research, there are thousands of funds and thousands of places you can invest. And I suffered quite a lot with choice paralysis. I just didn't know what was best, what was optimum, and it prevented me from doing any investing whilst I did months of research. So what I would do now is something like set up a direct debit into a low cost global index and then figure out if you need to tweak it. Odds are you probably won't, and you'll have already had that money being invested over time. And if you can nudge up your investments per month, do it. So it'll pay off handsomely, kind of in the future. Alex, in terms of automation and getting this right in terms of habits, we've discussed direct debits or standing orders just to automate those things, especially things like household bills, credit cards. I take a real hands-off approach to all of that. If I can get tech and computers to do make those decisions for me, I just know that that's going to happen, and it saves me from meddling and looking at ridiculously expensive coffee making equipment. So that's already done, and I've paid myself already. So any other thoughts on kind of automation or making that path a bit easier?
No, I think you covered it all there. I think, automation is key. I think if you can set it up as early as possible, after you get paid, day after you get paid, the money that's in you isn't really sat in your bank account for the month waiting for it to then leave and be tempted to spend it. And that's kind of what I do. So as soon as possible after my payday, I have an automatic direct debit that gets pulled from my bank account. And I found that you almost you become to you think of it as just another bill, and it's not a bill, it's your money. But yeah, automation, super, yeah, really, really effective. Just takes any decision making out.
Yeah, and we know as humans we're not good at making these decisions. I mean, look at kind of choice paralysis, jam theory. Picking those things is hard because if we pick something and it's not right, we're going to feel worse as if we don't pick something at all, which is why people hesitate. So, setting these things up and making them easy is a huge, huge part. And if you want more info on habits, James Clear has written a super book called Atomic Habits that we've mentioned before as well. So either Audible, I mean, other services are available, or pick up a copy of it. It's one of the first early books I read, and it's really, really helped improve all aspects of my life with things like that. So yeah, those few thoughts on that. Alex, in terms of like, is there anything else you can think of that you'd wish you'd done when you were 20, apart from not waste some money, obviously balance it? But we're saying, like, do bits of this and bits of that. Like, if you're going on holiday, go on the trip, buy the car, buy the clothing you want, but just have an overview of your finances. Don't overspend and get into debt. Be aware of other people and what they spend their money on. You don't have any objective metrics apart from they had the money, they've spent it, so now they don't have it. You really don't know how much they earn, what their debt load is like, whether they own their house or they rent it, who knows? So really focus on you, compete with only you, and I think just like run your own kind of journey and learn along the way. Talk to your pals about it. You know, they might not talk about money. They might not know these things. So I had a quick chat with a colleague of mine who's 21, has just joined our team. And I said, look, if you want to be super wealthy, put a small portion of your paycheck and invest it. And she was like, I already do that. My cousin talked to me about it when I was 18, and I've been doing it since I got my first job out of university. And I was like, oh, okay, uh, good job. And it's just made a humongous difference. And yeah, I think it's just these simple conversations that people don't have, partly because people don't know them, partly because there's a taboo about money. So it's just action in this case is so much better than no action and procrastinating.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that. I think it's you learn by doing, and it's you know just getting on and trying is the best way to do that. I think in terms of I've always been fairly uh I've always been pretty good with my money, to be honest. I've always saved, and I've always had my employer maximum pension match, which is just a no-brainer. It's 100% free money. Just do it and just live without the if you're a few pound less you'll get in your pay packet. And the other thing I did do, and I think that was probably worth an episode on this, is just around when it comes to investing, is I started when I was kind of first kind of got my job, was rather than I had a few index funds, but a lot of my money was in it's the whole trying to chase returns and get rich quick. And I invested started investing in very risky individual companies. Um, I learned a load from them, so it's definitely, I lost money overall, and I'm happy to talk through some of the the fraudulent companies I actually ended up investing in. But that for me was a good lesson to learn. If you are keen on investing and really, really into it, I think we could do it. Yeah, it's probably worth doing a lesson, doing an episode on is it worth actually investing in individual shares and the pros and cons of that. But that was one of my biggest regrets is one of those. It's basically yeah is not allocating more of my money to just plain index funds earlier on and having more of it into speculative investments. But I think that's par for the course when you start investing. Um, but no, for me, that's kind of what we outline around, having your emergency fund, even 1 month's worth of expenses is going to save you a load of stress and reduce a lot of anxiety related to money, and clearing off any kind of overhanging student debt. And this isn't necessarily like your student loans that will get paid through your salary. If you've taken out, like, you've got overdrafts or certain credit cards where you might have had a good student offer on, is starting to clear those. So I know sometimes the kind of certain amount of months or years after you graduate, the loan is still tax free. It's still interest free, but then the interest kicks in. So it's important to almost, you know, chop that, pay that off before you get hit with huge debts, and then, try not to go back into debt and be apart from, say, a mortgage. If when the time comes to start purchasing a house. But yeah, those would be, yeah, if I were to be chatting to myself, 15 years ago, that's exactly what I'd be saying to myself. Um, and yeah, not to get too hung up on buying expensive shirts and suits, trying to look like a fancy uh, American Psycho style investment banker.
I think it's better the shirts and suits than that. What's that thing he wears to protect him from blood? Like an all-in-one hazmat suit type thing.
Oh yeah, yeah, the raincoat thing.
Yeah, like a coverall thing. Yeah, bit weird if you went into work dressed like that.
Yes, yeah.
And another thing you just mentioned about staying out of debt, when I was like, I got my first job and I went into the bank for something, I can't remember. One of the people there asked me if I had a credit card. And I said no. And then they said, well, do you want one? Basically, because new graduates with new amounts of money, banks are, in my opinion, quite willing to give credit cards to. So I did go through this rigmarole with the idea that it would help build credit history on my part. And I went to this thing. I got like a basic credit card from the bank, and in hindsight, it was terrible. There's no benefits to it whatsoever, apart from just paying a bill slightly later. Looking at it more deeply, the interest rate's like 30%, 29 point something percent. And I think they gave me something like a £4,000 or £5,000 limit. And when the guy in the suit, he was an old fellow with grey hair, in a fancy looking suit, he gave me the like the details and the info on it, and he said you'll get your card posted to you within a few days. And the last thing he said is happy spending. So really kind of trying to put me in that position of using credit every month eventually to then be paying them loads of interest. So be wary about credit cards. Use them if you are going to use them wisely. Use them to get some kind of benefit or reward and to build your credit score. Be aware of the interest rates you'll pay. We've done a whole episode on credit card debt and what to do if you're in it. So have a look back at that if you are in it. But just have a good awareness of it, because at this point the bank is not your friend. The bank is there to take money off of you rather than to, and obviously to help you store your salary, etc., standing orders, blah blah blah. But be really aware of credit, and the freely accessible credit. It's accessible until it's not, and then it can become a real problem overnight. And you hear banks like closing cards, pulling overdrafts if they figure you're too risky or whatever. And a lot of that's out of your control. So a good amount of awareness of credit, how it's why it's kind of profitable for banks and generally not end consumers like you and me. And again, I think it will help keep a bit of a lid on spending if you only have your salary and when it's gone, rather than having this access to a line of credit that could be many thousands of pounds, like as in my case.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think, banks aren't your friend. You make them money. And the reason they are very approachable and look, nice and open and friendly is because, you're going to be paying their wages. So, yeah, you need the banks to serve you, and you don't want to be the one serving the bank. So, yeah, that's another good lesson. They'll look super friendly, super nice and open, offer you lots of things, but yeah, treat it with caution, like they're there to sell.
Yeah, and in the back of their mind, they're thinking, I hope this person can't manage their money very well, so they end up using credit. Therefore, we're likely to get interest payments, and it just becomes a big debt cycle. And in like that will take up more of your money that you're working hard for. And Alex and I, we want you to keep more of that money, not to send it back to the institutions and other places. So I'm hoping that these have been helpful. If you have any kind of questions about it, email us. If you're brand new to working and you're thinking about, say, making your first investments, or you have any questions on pensions or emergency funds or anything like that, do wing us an email and we'll read it, have a think, and come back to you. Obviously, not regulated financial advice in any way, shape, or form. Just two guys called Alex musing over a question and sending you our thoughts back. So, Alex, in terms of anything else like money lessons, if you're 20, anything you can think of you wish you'd done differently or that you wish that somebody had told you? I mean, the only last thing I have is the power of compounding, really. And if someone had showed me, if you put 10% of your salary away in 30 years, it will be worth this much, it would be a humongous figure. And I know we've discussed kind of investing compound stuff before, but I wish I knew that sooner. I think I learned it when I was 30 or 29 or something like that. Like if I'd known that at 18, it would have been life changing. Well, in fact, generation changing. It changes generational wealth by that point.
Yeah, that's really a really good point. And I mean, to be honest, I don't have any other. I mean, there's little regrets of some stupid spending, but I've been fairly fortunate in my employer that I started on my graduate program. Their pension was 15%, so I could put in. I think I put in six, and they put in nine. It was very competitive. So ever since starting on that, I've automatically been putting a fair chunk of my salary into my pension, and that has really started to pay now, and I can really see that grow. But yeah, I think the compound interest that should just be like, and the discipline to stick with investing early on is just a lesson we can all learn from. I think no matter how many people you ask, when you know, common when you speak to people when they're older, all say the same thing, which is I wish I'd have started earlier. And I often think if you ask those people, 30, 40 years older than you, what they would have done, is quite good to heed their advice, especially when it all seems to center around, I wish I'd have started earlier. But it's like the saying, isn't it? The best time to plant a tree was like 20 years ago, but the next best time is now. It's that good lesson I would take.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, start planting good financial seeds. I mean, I'm just as a last thing before we close this, I'm the opposite to you in terms of pensions. I didn't start working kind of officially until I was out of uni 22, 26, something like that. And I had like bare minimum pensions in, so I am really behind in terms of pension contributions. Alex, I can say for almost certainty you'll have three, maybe four times what I have in my pension currently. Um, so I now have to put more of my salary in because I didn't start working earlier. So I put 9% of my salary in. My employer puts in six. We've done a whole episode of my new pension actually a couple of shows ago, so you can have a delve into that one with a bit more detail. But because I'm so far behind, I'm having to put so much more of my income into that, which means I have less money to spend now. So if I'd been a bit more pension wise and investment wise, because a pension is just an investment in the stock market, that if I'd been wiser back then, I wouldn't have to commit so much more of my salary now to it. So it would have massively benefited me if I'm hoping if I could hear something like this when I was 20, 21, before I got my job, or whenever, when you first start working, instill some of these good habits that we've discussed. And I would be so much better off. And I kind of wish someone had said, hey, you've just got your job now. Please think about doing these things. This is what I think you should do. And this is why. This is how it can impact your life in a positive way. And I just didn't get that. So learn it from us. We haven't had those things. We've had to learn it the hard way. Take those lessons from us and flourish really and be richer than you ever probably thought you could be with working. Yeah. So yeah, Alex, anything else? Because I've got nothing else. My well for this topic is dry.
Yeah, ditto. I think we've covered everything that we need to, and there's some really good lessons there for people to take on, and yeah, thank us in 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll keep the email inbox open, and hopefully we get emails when we're old and retired and driving Maseratis. Yeah, Alex, just as a total segue and not related to the episode. So, if you want only money lessons when you're 20, now's the time to switch off. But I promised Alex I would tell him a fact about sand, and I forgot until now. So, I might as well bring it out to the world. So, I've just been reading a book called Material by a man called Ed Conway. It came out in 2023, and it's about the six most um, like materials in the world that have had the most impact, and one of those is sand. And I didn't know there was loads of different types of sand, and its main ingredient is silica, which is where we get things like glass from. But if you add the chemical boron to that, it becomes borosilica, which is also known as pyrex, which is much stronger. You can heat it, freeze it, etc. It's really good. But in terms of quantifying sand, it's basically a measurement for that grain or that tiny piece of rock, because sand is just tiny rocks. If it's between 0.06 millimeters and 2 millimeters, it's a grain of sand. So technically, salt is also sand and sugar is also sand. Everything's sand. That's it.
Wow, that is. I didn't when you texted and said that you had a sand fact. I didn't think it was going to be that. That's really interesting. Thank you for sharing. I'll try and find my own fun fact for next week.
Do it. That'll be a good idea. I mean, I didn't do any of the research. All of that goes to Mr. Ed Conway, who wrote the book. But it's called Material. I'm listening to it as I drive in and out of work. So yeah, I thought I'd bring you a sand fact for this one at least. But episode 24.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, and I will be back with my own next week.
Okay, I'll hold you to it. All right, thank you, my friends, for listening. Alex and I both appreciate it. And we'll see you next time for more money chat and also a sand fact. None of what we discuss on the show is to be considered financial or health advice, and we recommend you always do your own research or consult an independent financial advisor or a doctor when making your financial or health decisions.